Welcome to the 7th video. So the painting is finished. So in this video I'm going to take you through some of the final steps that hopefully move it from being pedestrian to a little bit more poppy. So things like putting in the daisies, which was really fun, glazing some of the faces. I've changed the robot to take you through that, finishing the rigging. So quite a few people have kindly asked what my plans are for this painting. Watch till the end and I'll talk you through where I'm at with that. Right, another day, another fabulous outfit. Today I'm working on trying to get a sort of dappled light. So I've got, just like I did with the quilt, where I mixed up some darks and lights, which have continued to be very useful puddles. They're very dried up, but they're still very useful. I'm trying to create a foreground here that is tonally representative of what's in the raft, but also I wanted to kind of make this figure almost disappear into the grass, and this one too, a bit like mimicking the way that things disappear into the water. So I've mixed up, you can probably see, so I've got a nice, a deep, slightly cooler green here and a slightly warmer, lighter one. And I'm just kind of blocking in the sort of undercolour of the grass in certain areas, and just wanted to show you before I cover it up because it's been really useful. This little section here is I'm going to cover it up now, but that's been my guide of where the break-off point is between my lights and darks. So, for example, all the lightest darks have to be darker than that. And where I've got lights, the darkest lights, I've been testing to make sure that they are, the darkest lights are lighter than that. So it's been a really useful marker, but I think I'm kind of mostly there now. So I'm going to risk taking that out. And also this snake, I had it coiled here, didn't really work. I had it in a zigzag here because that's kind of what adders sort of do. Still didn't work. I didn't like that I had like a kind of boundary of the picture, because obviously the things in the picture wouldn't know where the edge of the picture was. And actually I think this works better now that it actually goes off the picture. So that's another decision. Okay, just a minute on the subject of staying sane. So I'm all over the place. I've stopped washing my brushes at night. I just give them a little rinse. I've got at least 2 palettes on the go. It is a bit of a mess, but I'm just ploughing on because I have got some time. So I just want to capitalise on that. So I'm trying to dot between tightening things up. So a lot of the faces need tightening up. So I'm going to show you that on a time lapse in a minute. And then some of the more easy made up stuff. Particularly I'm going to be looking at trying to make in the shadows of the tree where the grass would have been in shadow for a long time, because I'm thinking that this is a morning light. I'm going to put some frost on the grass, so I'm just kind of dotting between really tightening up the faces and then a bit more loose, creative, adding in some texture to the grass and trying to differentiate a little bit more between the lights and darks. Also, I think this shadow looks a bit muddy. I think it's a little bit warm and needs to be cooler because it'll be picking up that bounce light from the sky. So that's the plan. Okay, so I'm going to start with these 2 Paula Rego figures from her fabulous painting. This is Paula Rego and her husband. So I'll start by oiling out. I tend to use kitchen roll. So I think my work probably has a little, because the canvas is quite rough. I think if my work survives the test of time and anyone's discovering it, they'll find it's got a slight coating of paper. Anyway, right, so that's ready to work on. Here we go. So I basically kind of copied this from Paula Rego's painting The Dance. And in that painting, Paula has portrayed herself through her life in several different stages. And when she's at her youngest, she's dancing with, I think, her nanny. And then she's dancing here with her husband, Vic, who she met at the Slade. And then she is dancing with her, she shows her husband dancing with his lover. And then she shows herself dancing in traditional costume on her own. So this obviously is the image of herself with her husband, and it's really interesting. So whilst I didn't want to do a complete copy, so I did want the figures to be fairly close stylistically to mine. Like, I didn't want them to really jump out, and her method of describing faces is quite idiosyncratic and I love it. So I wanted to still preserve it, but almost more important was to preserve the way that he is looking out towards the viewer, almost conspiratorially, sort of saying, I have this secret, and the way that she is looking at him. So when she painted the dance, he was actually dying, and she used her son, their son, who looked very like him, as model. So it's really interesting if you look it up to hear the story of this painting. So I haven't completely done it justice, but hopefully that's enough. Right, so happily I'm at the stage now where I'm reinstating the rigging. So I can't quite see, my sky is so thick, but I know that this rope here is straight because it's tight. So I can put that in. There we go. And got my trusty Uber ruler out for these bits, so that means I can hold it slightly away. I just took these, I basically just covered this with the sky so that I could get that continuation. There we go. Da, da, da. And I'll tidy that up. So I'm really just trying to match the rigging, a lot of which I had originally in my painting, but as I've built up layers and done things that run behind it, I wanted to get that sort of even coverage of tone and colour. So I decided it was better basically just to paint over the rigging and then add it back in now. It's absolutely fascinating if you go really close and zoom into the painting, looking at the way this rigging was represented and how carefully you can compare it across Jericho's original sketches. And whilst the whole composition changed a lot, the mast was pretty consistent because I think he was using the model that a couple of the survivors, or one of them, built for him. So I think it's probably fairly accurate, and it's just interesting. You can see where things have been snapped off. You can see the rivets and the rope. So yeah, just fascinating. I just kept thinking about them, trying to piece it all together and anticipate what they'd need when they were on that awful journey. Little did they know they were going to be shortly afterwards cut loose, and we're going to have to rely on this sail rather more. So, and I expect they were very, very glad of the tent, which in the original Jericho painting you can see, whereas I've replaced it with the pole dancer's legs, but they had a sort of sheeting tent, which I guess in bad weather or at night would have been a very, very welcome shelter for them out at sea. Right, so this is just about done, and time for a few finishing touches to sort out that mast. What's all this about? You probably guessed. Just lost track of the edge of the mast, and I just wanted to make sure it was straight because, well, it wasn't straight. It's gone right off there. There. There's a bit there. Missing. Bit here missing. Bit here, bit here, bit here. And there's that edge. There we go. Ready? That's better. Right, so I was just a bit concerned that this humanoid robot didn't look like humanoid robots, how they look. And I asked Anna, and she said it was fine. The only thing was that this really needs a bit of skin and hair. You know, so the thing is, they're made to look like humans. They're made to present as human women. So I've got a secret weapon for this. So I'm basically going to glaze it. So treat this like a grisaille. And this is my secret weapon. It has to, generally, to work well as a glaze, it has to be a transparent colour. And I've got this fantastic transparent gold ochre, which I really like. It's an old Winsor & Newton colour, but it's lovely. And so I'm going to mix that with some alizarin crimson and burnt umber and maybe a bit of French ultramarine to get a good skin tone to go on there. Okay, so let's see how that goes. And then the other thing she's going to need is a bit of makeup. But it's incredible how that, how well it works. I'm not using a particular glazing medium, I'm just using my normal medium, my usual mix. But yeah, do it in subtly build it up. Keep it control. Looks a little bit orange to me, but I'm going to see what that looks like once it's dried, and put some in the hand as well. Just like that. And I can build that up in layers. That'll dry quite quickly. I'm going to put some nail polish on there. Right, I'm doing the ropes and wanted to pause for a minute to produce an ode to the scraggy brush. Look at that. It's one that most people would have probably never bought, let alone thrown out. But really useful, I think, for kind of unpredictable textures. And so I hope you'll join me. I'm going to be doing this bit of rope here. Now this bit of rope as well I wanted to talk about. So in the original painting, it's there holding up the sailcloth that I have replaced with the wonderful Claire. And so Claire is supporting herself. This is called a Gemini pose, she told me. So I particularly wanted to keep this line here. So this indicates where she's actually gripping the pole and is holding it very tight. And this flesh is being almost pulled up as her weight pulls down. And also just here, there's a pull of flesh where obviously gravity is pulling her down and she's gripping on. So I want to make the point, she didn't actually need this rope, but I want to put it in because it echoes the rope on the raft and it just seemed to fit. So I would be hoping that you'll join me while I just do this rope and show with the highlights, the value of a brush like this. But first, let's go over to excuse of a palette, and I've got a nice, so it is still in the dark, so I don't want it to be too light, but it does need to be a bit warm. So I'm a big fan of cadmium orange, just for like warming things up without using much paint. So there's a nice warm colour. So it's really just going along the edge here of this, like it's just catching in the raft, it's just catching that, like that. catch that edge. And actually this rope here has a similar tone of kind of warm light just catching under it. And it's this brush, you know, the unpredictability of the brush. Control becomes a luxury rather than a guaranteed when you've got, yeah, right. So there we go. The scraggy brush strikes again. And then on the raft, this rope comes here and then back up round here. And on this bit, it's like just, it's even darker, the highlights, and they are, it's almost like the rope is backlit. So I'm just going to use a little bit of even more cadmium in that paint there. Oops. Right, and I am going to go and address this as well. Right, need to sort her leg a bit. Right, as I start the daisies, I just wanted to mention, so I'm doing the same thing that I did with the grass and the quilt. So I've mixed up, these are my dark daisy colours, so the daisies in the shadow, mostly cobalt blue, but this wonderful colour, this is Michael Harding unbleached titanium white, titanium dioxide, sorry, which was a gift from the wonderful Sue Ransley. And I have found that is wonderful for mixing, you know, just stopping me making these blues too violent. So it's giving me a really nice mix. And I've got, this is like a zinc white. So just again, to stop it being too, you know, basically just to leave some light in reserve so that I can go in maybe with the titanium ultimately, but to take pure titanium white. So this is my daisies in the shadow, which will be in these sort of areas here. And then these are my daisies in the light colours, a tiny bit of yellow ochre, and this is cadmium yellow. So I've just got a couple of shades there. And then, so greens, I've got greens in the dark. I've mixed up, this is a chromatic black using sap green, which I absolutely love, and burnt umber. So it's a kind of, yeah, umbery black. And then I've got a slightly lighter dark colour just for a bit of variety. And then I've been mixing up the light, you know, so this is then the, basically to brighten these, although they look light on the camera, they're actually not as bright as they look. So I'm just mixing up 3 kind of leafy colours. So here's the last one going in. This works brilliantly for that too. I'm going to put a little bit of lead white in. I've got a tiny bit of sap green just on the palette knife, which is enough really to carry in there. And it just, you know, this titanium dioxide just stops it being too. I'm going to take a little bit of medium there to loosen it up. Yeah, so that gives me a range. I think I might kill that. Oh, I've got a little bit of burnt umber on there. Maybe a teensy bit of alizarin crimson, just to do a little bit more neutralising. There we go. Okay. And a little bit more white. I really do want this to be quite light. So that's me prepped and ready to paint. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one. I'm just going to be placing the light daisies with reference. So here I've got the Raft of the Medusa there, so I can see where the light bits are. And I'm going to put a bit of light in here. So that will just mark. So what I'm trying to do is remember that the daisies have no relationship with the light in terms of their location. So patch-wise, they'll go, but only daisies in the light get this colour. So this is just to start, and it's great for suggesting the waves and things. So those waves are just under the beam. So I'll load here, load of light daisies. I can flesh them out later. And And then if that's a swathe of daisies, it will also continue into the dark. Let's do that. So this is this kind of patch. And then basically after staring at lots and lots of daisy photos, I just added some fairly random petals in a brighter white to try and suggest the shape without explaining too much. Right, this is the last day of painting, so I'm just taking stock before I start. Plan is, Paula Rego, I'm just going to put her other leg in, as it's bugging me that it's not visible. I've kind of got one blackbird, one snake, and now one little rat in there. And I'm not sure about this 111, so I'm going to add another rat. I think maybe I've got one of my little cutouts, so I can experiment. Maybe somewhere in here like that. Maybe up on this. But I think if it was on here, it would probably make this buckle a little bit, so that would take a bit of sorting. Or possibly humping this rat. And I need to purple this skin tone. It's got a little bit too much yellow ochre in it. Sorry about the glare. And also purple these shoes a bit because Dorothy's shoes weren't that sort of scarlet. And also it is in the shade, so it needs to be a tiny bit darker. I need to make these gardening gloves a little bit more obvious and make them overlap onto the snake. And then go around with a very dark, and just make the sort of contrast, the foreground darks really pop as dark as I possibly can. So I use a chromatic black, but I'll get that pretty solid, and possibly a snail or two around here, to be decided. Using zinc white, which is transparent. Right, final touches. I haven't actually oiled it out because some I've touched up all over the place, so I can't risk smudging those. But I've got my usual black, French ultramarine and burnt umber. And look at this brush. I can't remember where I got this from. Colcott Collection. I think it might have been from a hotel or something. It's got a pencil on one end. But it's really nice and soft. It's synthetic. And I'd say all I'm doing is just getting some cheap wins. Just a few little, just bumping up the odd thing, creating a little bit more of a sense of, you know, the brush is really unpredictable, which means that I'm not going to get too tight. Just making things, hopefully making a few more things sing, like tightening up. There's a corner there. I reckon if I tighten that corner up, it'll just read slightly differently, this corner here. So that's all I'm doing, just work my way around. Right, the gloves are done, and I've got a child off sick at the moment. So Soggy Rabbit's owner is off sick from school, and he has had some of this only today. Do you know what it is? I think I better put it in. Very good stuff. Just to follow up on my plans for this painting, something that has really helped me was knowing that when Jericho painted his original incredible Raft of the Medusa, he didn't have a guaranteed destination for it. He took many months out and he entered it into the Salon, which I guess is like our sort of summer exhibition, Royal Academy, and it did get in. But actually, he died sadly quite young, with it still in his possession. So he showed it in London after that, and it was very well received, and he made some money from tickets. But knowing that really helped me move away from trying to stress about the future with it. I've learned so much, which I hope you've benefited from these videos and found it interesting. I have a very ambivalent relationship with the open call mechanism, but I am going to enter it, and I hope that women would look at this and identify with at least one of the figures on there, hopefully more, and that it would create a sense of not being alone. So I've been through the process of taking photos. That is something else. It's really hard to get a decent photo of this. But so stay tuned for video 8, which will be the varnishing video. So a bit of gratuitous varnishing. And thank you so much for watching.